of Chairman David Murray and fellow Director John Fraser, two of Corporate Australia's veterans. There are calls the CEO Francesco Di Ferrari should also go after the alleged perpetrator, Bo Pahari, was demoted to a still very senior role at the company. It's been a disappointing tenure for Mr Murray, who came in June 2018 as the great big hope following the smashing of AMP at the Royal Commission. But as you can see throughout his tenure, AMP has nothing but underperformed the rest of the ASX 200. His appointment of Francesco Di Ferrari as the great fixer in January 2019 also failed. His turnaround strategy's gone nowhere. What's led to this and what's to become of AMP? Andrew Robertson reports.
At the Banking Royal Commission, no company was shamed more than AMP.
Charging premiums for life insurance to someone who's dead. That's the position, isn't it?
Yes, that's the way the system is treating it today.
In the wash-up, AMP lost 5 directors, including its chairman and chief executive. Just 2 years later, the board resignations are happening again, as once more the culture of AMP is exposed.
It's sending a really strong and clear message that AMP is not backing their own employees or the woman involved.
The furor centres around revelations that this man, Bo Pahari, was promoted to run AMP's most profitable division, despite being docked $500,000 in pay after an allegation of sexual harassment was made by one of his subordinates. That prompted a shareholder revolt, resulting in Chairman David Murray, as well as Mr Pahari's immediate boss, former Treasury Secretary John Fraser, both quitting the AMP board. Mr Pahari stays, though, back at a previous level, still earning millions of dollars a year.
What people have heard is very much we place far more emphasis on the people who generate profits or control the generation of profits than we do on people who do the right thing.
AMP has refused to release the report into the sexual harassment claim, prompting the woman's lawyer to warn that she'll continue to speak out.
While there's any suggestion of trivialising or misleading investors and others, she will be, I think, vigilant about making sure the record is corrected.
Also in the spotlight is Chief Executive Francesco Di Ferrari, who earlier this month said he wanted to improve the culture at AMP. However, by keeping a man with such a big black mark against him in a very senior position, there are those who believe Mr Di Ferrari has already failed.
I think he needs to make a very decisive action now or step down himself.
In a statement late today, AMP said the complaint was dealt with appropriately and Mr Pahari was penalised accordingly.
Andrew Robertson there. Well, the Australian Council of Superannuation Investors represents nearly 40 major super funds on AMP has been disappointing. Louise Davidson, your organisation's been unhappy with AMP for months, if not years. What was the final straw?
Look, I think, Elise, that our real concern was the promotion of Bo Pahari to the position of CEO of AMP Capital and the message that that sent about sexual harassment. So our view is an organisation can have as many policies on diversity and gender equality as it likes, but fundamentally, if people who are perpetrators of sexual harassment continue to get promoted while people who are harassed continue to leave an organisation, we will never arrive at gender equality in the workplace.
David Murray and John Fraser have spoken out saying that they've done the right thing throughout all of this. What do you think made them step down today?
Look, I think it must have become clear that their own views were out of step with those of other stakeholders. So out of line with the views of investors and with the community in general. And really, from what we hear, I think out of line with a lot of the staff at AMP as well.
There's speculation that you and other major shareholders were organising an extraordinary general meeting in order to roll some or all of the board, and that's what's forced this decision today. Is there any truth to that?
I don't have any information about that, but we've been talking to the board, obviously, as we've been going through this process. And I think the views of investors were made pretty clear to the board.
Is it enough that David Murray and John Fraser have gone? There's plenty of others on the board who have, in David Murray's words, supported every decision.
Look, I think that AMP's still got some way to go in this process, and we'll be hoping to get more detail about the cultural changes that they're talking about, the reviews that they're setting up internally and so on. The new chair now has an opportunity to bring in some new blood to the board. I think it'd be terrific if perhaps it's time to bring in a couple more women, some senior female company directors into AMP, just to really broaden the gender and diversity perspective within that organisation.
Have you spoken to the new chair, Deborah Hazelton?
No, we haven't had a chance to speak with her yet.
If she was part of the board who promoted Bo Pahari and then allowed him to become, in the last couple of weeks, the head of the Culture and Diversity Committee, why is she the person to lead the change at AMP?
Look, I think, it's a very difficult thing for a company to have, you can't really operate a company with all directors walking out at the same time. And so I don't really know the new chair personally, but the company has obviously decided that she's the best person to take things forward, and we can only wait and see. We're going to have to make a judgment on that over coming months, Elise.
How long will you give her coming into this position to show that she is the right person for this job?
Well, look, the things we'll be looking for will be a willingness to engage with shareholders, and also for the board to really lay out a very clear plan about what's going to happen next, about how they are going to address the cultural problems that have clearly been plaguing AMP over recent years. What is it that they're going to do to make sure that something like this couldn't happen again?
Why should CEO Francesco Di Ferrari keep his position? 2 of his key appointments have been caught in sexual harassment claims, and the performance of the company has certainly not improved under his stewardship.
Yes, it's been a pretty tough road, hasn't it? I think that's going to have to be a matter for the board to consider. The new board is going to need to think about that and about the extent to which, what needs to change, if anything.
Do you expect investors and shareholders to have a say on that as well?
Well, I think that, I really think we need to give the board an opportunity to lay out what they think they can achieve and how they're going to achieve it before we jump to any conclusions about further changes at senior levels.
No explanation has been provided by AMP as to why one of its key executives, Alex Wade, left the company so suddenly. Is that good enough?
Well, it is disappointing to see that lack of transparency.
Mr. Di Ferrari has appointed an independent consultant to address workplace culture. Given we've just seen reports that AMP's lawyer sent an email to employees to say do not leak about the company or you'll risk termination, do you have any confidence in the success of an investigation like this?
Well, look, it does seem to be a helpful step to bring someone in from outside to assist with that process. Statements about not leaking to the press and so on, I guess what we would really like to see is a more constructive environment established at the company. Obviously, they've been running on a pretty, a bit of in a crisis mode over recent weeks. And I guess that's never a particularly good situation to be making decisions. But hopefully over the next few weeks, there will be a bit more clear air for them and they'll be in a position to actually articulate exactly what they're planning to do so that we're all in a position to make a judgment about whether we think it's good enough or not.
What do you expect will be the next steps for your organisation and your members if you don't like AMP's board nominees or if you don't see any shift in the culture or the report isn't released publicly?
Well, we'll continue to encourage the company to be, to be open and transparent about what they're doing. In terms of board, new appointments to the board, that'll take some time because it takes time to identify and then to get the agreement of people to come onto a board. And so I think really for us, it's a bit of a wait and see situation right now. We accept that the company's going to need a little bit of time to regroup and to work out, exactly what the next steps are for them.
Do you think the AGM will be a risk for them if they don't show signs of significant change?
I would really hope that by the time we get to the AGM that a lot of these issues will have been dealt with and resolved, but I guess we're just going to have to watch this space.
Louise Davison, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Reporting season rolled on today and Fortescue Metals hit a new high after a massive rise in profit, netting Chairman Twiggy Forrest a $2 billion payday. On the market, the